This is how to clean and protect the surface of your beloved car. For this process, what I'm going to use to clean the car first is a synthetic clay bar. And for that, you're going to also need some speed shine as lubricant for it. You're going to need some good clean microfiber cloths. And then to protect it, what I'm going to be using is the Graphene 303 protectant. These are just the products that I've grown to use over the years on the 911, the CTS-V, so I'll use them on the 488 now as well. And I've had great luck with them, so I'm going to continue to do what I know works. The first step is to identify the actual painted surfaces. You only want to do this on painted surfaces. So for this particular car, you wouldn't want to do it up here because it has had the expel coating put on everything from this body line and the hood forward to protect the paint. So you don't want to use Claybar or anything on that surface. It's not painted, it's the expel film. And if you have questions, it's a little hard to see, but you can sort of see and feel an edge of that film on the painted surfaces. So if you look at the body lines, try to look for those and feel or see that edge, and that'll tell you pretty quickly if you got that expel coating or not. Again, this car has the whole front part of it done, so I don't have to worry about that. Check your mirrors too, because that's another place where you might feel kind of a sharp edge there where they put film over it to protect it from bug damage as well, or rock chips. Now, like on the 911, even though this piece up here looks like it's just painted black like everything else on the car, it is actually glass, so I wouldn't use it on that either. However, the wheels on both cars are powder coated black, so that's still what I consider a painted surface. So I'll apply the graphene to this. Since the Ferrari wheels were just powder coated before I picked it up last week, I'm not going to go through and claybar those. That's kind of a pain with all the surfaces, but I will definitely use the Graphene 303 to protect them when I do the rest of the car. The first thing you want to do is give the car a good bath, especially if you have, say, painted surfaces up front that you're going to be doing this process on. You want to make sure to get the bugs off, use that bug remover, bug and sludge remover, whatever it's called. Wash the car really well, get it all clean so that when you're doing the Claybar process, you're not rubbing more dirt into the paint and scratching it or anything. Get it good and clean. Get all the water spots you can off of it. But water spots, frankly, aren't going to hurt it if there's still a few, because you're going to be putting this speed shine on it anyway. So get the car clean, and then you can move it back in the garage where you can kind of take your time doing this whole process indoors where it's temperature controlled. This synthetic clay bar is going to make life a whole lot easier compared to the old clay bars of the past. It's just much easier. But before you start doing this, the one thing to do is look at the paint and make sure it's a good, clean finish. You should see very little, if any kind of swirl marks or anything like that. This car is, I think, 8,500 miles now that I've drove it home from North Carolina. So the paint is in really good shape on this. No need to do anything besides the clay bar. If, however, your car's outside, it's been oxidized, it's got some scratches or whatever, hasn't been cared for as well, or just higher mileage, what you may have to do is go through and do a polishing process first. Clay bar is just a finishing process. But if you have swirl marks, then get out something like some rubbing compound, finishing compound that you would use on a final paint job. If it's really bad, you may even have to go to like a 2000 grit wet sand first, but get the paint nice and clean and scratch free before you start the clay bar. One of the key things to this is to keep the surface good and lubricated with your speed shine. So I'm, again, not going to do the front here because it's got film on it, but I'm going to start doing an area. So I'm going to pick this kind of first little area up here and get it good and wet with the speed shine. And then I'm going to just do pretty much circular motion and just go around it here. And you want to get nice even pressure. That's one of the keys to this. You don't want to get any more pressure in one place than the other if you can avoid it. And where it's really critical is things like where you have edges, like along this wheel. If I were doing this section, I'd want to be real careful around that edge, because in theory this is removing an ever so slightly amount of material, just like polishing. And if you polish too much, it's real easy to burn through on those edges, and you definitely don't, you're not going to burn through with this most likely, but just be careful. You know, you should soften up or just go up to the edge without going over anything like that that's a hard edge. And you might ask, well, how do I know when enough's enough? You know, if you're starting out with clean paint, then that's a big part of it. I try to cover each area about 4 to 6 or 8 passes. So as long as you do this, you know, really I do this about once a year. And so as long as you're taking care of it, and ideally if you're storing it indoors is even better, but it shouldn't take a whole lot of work. And I'm not putting hardly any pressure on this. You can see I'm just have a light grip on it, just keeping it wet. Circular motion going in all across this area. Trying to do it nice and even. And up here, obviously, there's going to be areas that are a little bit difficult, and that's fine. But big flat surfaces are the best. Now, I will say, as I'm doing this, depending on the car, so let's say once I get over here into this scallop design, it's going to be a little bit different because now it curves in on me, right? And so this clay bar is soft, and what you want to do is squeeze it in a way so that it sort of conforms in a curve to the area you're doing. And again, watching those edges, keep away from the edges, but squeeze it, keep it nice and wet, and get in there with it so you get nice even pressure and avoid the edges. Now, depending on what kind of car you have, these can be a challenge. So something like the Cadillac is very easy because it's a whole lot of just flat surfaces, very simple. Something like the 911 over here is going to be a little bit more tricky because it's got these big old hips on it. So again, you have to be careful as you go in and out of the swoops to the rear wheel wells here. And something like this Ferrari is definitely the most complex of the 3 cars because you have scallops in here, you've got this big insert down here, you got a lot of nice, beautiful curves everywhere, and you just have to be very mindful of avoiding those edges and making sure you're conforming the clay bar to those surfaces. Now that the clay bar process is all finished, the car has a nice clean surface, and the next step is to get all these spots off. So if you look across the surface after it, you'll see basically just looks like a lot of water spots. It doesn't mean the car is necessarily dirty, but you don't want those water spots on there before you start using the graphene coating, or it seems like it can kind of seal in those spots. When I first started doing this, I would just wash the car with just water to get rid of the spots, and that seemed to be okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and use the soap from Griot's Garage. In the old days, I would just use Dawn dish soap because it was a good degreaser. These days, I'll use that Griot's Garage stuff because it's not as strong of a detergent as the Dawn, so it's a little bit more friendly for things like the ceramic coatings, because the last thing you want to do is put your nice coating on and then strip it all off every time you wash the car and lose that protection. So I'm going to use a little bit of that, roll it outside, rinse it off, squeegee it, chamois it, get it back in here, and then I'll let it dry and I'll start the ceramic coating application there in a little bit. Now that the car is all nice and clean and it's wiped down, chamoised and everything, there's no spots on it. If you do come across an area that's got some water spots, you can use the speed shine in a rag, one of these, to get rid of the spots. Again, it's best to have a clean surface so you're not sealing the water spots in when you use the ceramic coating. So what I do is I take the ceramic coating, I've got 2 rags, I've got a nice clean one, and I've got one that I've washed before that's got a little bit of discoloration already from this. It's graphite based, I would assume, which is like pencil lead, which is probably why it has that gray tone to it. So you don't want to spray on the car. I'm gonna spray on the rag, and I'm just gonna wipe it on like you would with wax. This isn't a polish, so you don't have to put a bunch of elbow grease into it. Just pick a little area, make sure you're getting everywhere. And if you go over onto, say, where the expel is, you know, the film or something, that's not the end of the world, or even like, you know, plastic like lenses or something. I'm not too worried about that. I just didn't want to use Claybar on those kind of surfaces, just because it is, in theory, a little bit of an abrasive. I know if you would sand expel, it would look like garbage, right? Because it'd be all scratched up. So it seems just sensible not to use anything abrasive on things like expel, but this is just a clear coating, and then you want to let this dry and it'll get a little bit hazy, and once it gets to that point, then you wipe it off with a clean rag. So while that's going on there, I'm going to go ahead and continue to spray more of this on the rag and keep working my way down the body of the car. Just taking this area, again, circular motions like you would in applying wax. You want to make sure you're getting enough for coverage, but you don't want to get too much or it gets too thick and then it won't dry. And you should be able to look at it in the light and kind of see that, yeah, I've got the coating is on there. It's not super thick, but it's definitely on there. One thing to note is that this stuff, I don't know if all ceramic coats are like this, but the Graphene 303, it's not going to turn white like the old waxes will. It's still going to be mostly clear, but you give it a few minutes, do some other areas, kind of check it out, and as long as it looks like it's not wet anymore to the touch, it's, you know, on there, then go ahead and just take your clean rag and just buff that area off. And again, you don't have to rub very hard because this is just purely getting the graphene coating off of the area where you applied it. So you're not gonna really see, it should just look nice and clean. Like down here, I don't know if I can get an angle where you still kind of see the swirls from the application of the coating. And it's kind of hard to see, maybe a little bit right there, but that's not how it should look after you're done. It should look nice and clean like this with absolutely nothing, no flaws, no residue, just clean. So if we look down here as well, we see things like that smudge. I'll try to pick on that area, and then we clean it, and now it's perfectly clean. So that's what you want to do, is just go through it with your clean rag, microfiber cloth, after you've applied the coating, and just clean it to where there's no more of the residue. So that's the basic process. You just want to do this in all the areas now, all the painted surfaces that you just cleaned with the Claybar. And finally, the car is ceramic coated, so it's all done and perfect. I used the ceramic coating on these badges since I don't think they're actually expel coated. I used them on the new powder coated wheels and pretty much any painted surface. Right after you do this, obviously the best thing to do is go around it with a light, look for any kind of residue yet that you forgot to buff off with the clean rag. Sometimes in the garage without a good lighting, you might miss a spot or two, but just keep an eye on it, especially once you get some light on it or have it outside, to make sure that all the lines look good. You kind of look down the side, make sure there's no residue from the graphene stuff, make sure it's all nice and clean. And then this in theory lasts about a year. These cars don't get driven a whole lot. So that's kind of what I try to do, is recoat it about every year on all the cars. The one drawback of doing this process is once you do it, the car looks so beautiful, you don't even want to drive it because you're afraid to get dust on it, which I know isn't the way to do it. They're meant to be driven and enjoyed, but they do look really nice when they're all clean though. If you haven't done so, please click the link below to subscribe, click the little bell for notifications, and let's live for today.